Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I will start very slowly since we have participants joining. Lukasz Kondraciuk from EPDE here, and welcome to webinar 4 in our Moldova 2025 series, co-organized with Promo-LEX. We've had almost 150 registrations for this particular webinar, and we are happy to see that EPDE and Promo-LEX are successfully creating the space to discuss important issues ahead of these very important elections. With less than a month left, we'll focus on practical steps, how to monitor hate speech and campaigns, the Moldovan campaign in particular, send cases to the right institutions and respond quickly while protecting free expression. Today is approximately 70 minutes, 5 short inputs, 6-7 minutes each, then Q&A. Please put questions in the Q&A box, not in the chat, and upvote if you want those questions answered. Romanian interpretation is on. Use the globe icon to switch between the English and Romanian channels, and we will keep a brisk pace so we can take as many questions as possible. Huge thanks to Promo-LEX for the partnership and to all our speakers from bringing practical tools and recent lessons to the table. With that, let me hand over to our moderator, my former colleague, Ilina Mangova, to frame the discussion and get us started.
Thank you very much, Lukasz. It is a pleasure to join the webinar today, organized by your organization and by Promo-LEX, and to welcome the distinguished speakers. Hate speech in Moldova elections have been triggering particular attention across Europe in the past few years. And hate speech in itself is not just an offensive use of offensive language. It is a quite negative, disempowering force that undermines social cohesions, weakens trust in institutions, and threatens the safety and dignity of individuals and groups. During election campaigns, hate speech is particularly dangerous. It polarizes societies, silences vulnerable voices, and it manipulates the democratic debate. Unchecked hate speech can escalate into discrimination, harassment, and violence. And it erodes the very foundation of democratic societies and freedom of speech. So that's why prevention and accountability are crucial. And actors at all levels play a significant role. I'm glad that in this panel we have actors actually exactly from basically all spheres of society that can work on preventing and sanctioning hate speech. Preventing and sanctioning hate speech is not just about limiting debate and free speech. It's about ensuring that debate remains respectful, inclusive, and rooted in respect for human rights. So I look forward to hearing today from our distinguished panelists about what they have been observing, what tools and what the legal means, the institutional means they have to prevent hate speech, and in the end also sanction it, and to get on a road in Moldova where hate speech is decreased and eventually eliminated. So it is my pleasure today to have with us, I would like to first introduce all the speakers: Angelica Frolov, Administrator in Genderdoc-M, LGBT Rights Lobby and Advocacy Program Coordinator; Sergiu Martin, Head of Monitoring Department of Audiovisual Council of Moldova; Mirela Chiriac, Project Officer at the Directorate General of Democracy and Human Rights at the Council of Europe in Chisinau, in Moldova; Ms. Galina Pleșca, Deputy Head of International Relations and European Affairs at the Directorate for General Police Inspectorate, the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Moldova, Chief of International Relations and Treaty Unit; and Irina, Corobcenco, Hate Speech Analyst at the Promo-LEX Association. So our panel is very prestigious and rich in knowledge. And I would like to, I will move in that following order. I would like to begin with Ms. Angelica Frolov. Genderdoc has had tremendous experience in monitoring and alarming about hate speech. Can you give us an overview of to what extent, in what form is Genderdoc-M monitoring hate speech towards specifically LGBT plus LGBTQI plus community ahead of the 2025 parliamentary elections in Moldova? How are you assessing the presence of hate speech towards this community, but also if you're observing it beyond that, and how is it manifested from your perspective? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will speak in Romanian. In this way, I'll be more brief, and I will express my thoughts faster regarding the monitoring of all Genderdoc-M monitors all the elections that take place, and especially regarding the hate speech and strategic analysis. We are trying to stop the hate speech. Honestly speaking, it's not really quite successful for us as much as we wanted it to. But I will tell you about some things that we have managed to notice about the hate speech in a more innovative approach. So the hate speech is much more efficient, is more innovative. And if in the beginning it was much more used that, let's say, hard language or simple language, I think that this book was written as a manual for propaganda where there were used some words such as LGBT propaganda or some words that have no meaning, but that have as a purpose to target the LGBT community, their way of life, that actually have no connection to the reality. But when a society has prejudices, but the Moldovan society has so many prejudices, and this language is very effective in this regard because it reaches to the target and it reaches the emotions of people, the most unpleasant emotions that a person can have, the fear, first of all. And if there's some false stigma or some false expressions, for example, to compare the LGBT community to the traditional families, it means that it doesn't have anything in common, but it has an intent to target those emotions of people, to keep them being in a state of fear. Now the elections and the election campaign has just started. Only some parties have launched in an election campaign. We could document only a few cases. Now we have alternative bloc election party that has already committed some such cases. They tried to insert the LGBT propaganda in schools. Also, Renato Sartei practiced the same thing. The Socialist Party and Unionist Party, the Heart of Moldova Party, they also promised that when they will be in the government, they will come the governing power, they will vote the law anti-LGBT, and they will impose the criminal punishment for LGBT community. So it means that many of the parties who were using the transphobia were not registered by the Central Election Committee and the Shore Party, but even those who were left to participate in the election campaign, they use the hate speech and they are not stopped. They use the instigation to discrimination and nothing is being done about that. Now they become even more dangerous. The previous elections in 2024, we noticed a tendency, a quite new one, which we haven't noticed before, when there are used some very interesting practices. I will try to tell you what's about. Apparently, they use some practices which are not homophobic. For example, some very positive and pro-LGBT posters, which they stick in different places, such as invitation to Pride March, or for example, some posters about false stereotypes about the LGBT community, but these posters are posted and associated with some political parties from their opposition, especially the PAS party, and the colors of the PAS party are also used, and those posters have a connection, as it seems that those posters have a connection to that party. So the Pride March, which took place in Chisinau, and it was a few days before these posters were sticked in different places. So in schools also we have some posters which speak about the most often met stereotypes and the demonization of these stereotypes compared to the LGBT persons. So there are some things that which apparently seem positive, but if they were in a democratic country without prejudices, which would speak about an openness to LGBT people. So some things are being done which we as an organization we should have, but they are presented in such a way, and some news are presented from those stories, and they attack indirectly or directly the parties, the pro-European parties through that. And today we had an article in the news about an activity which Genderdoc-M is conducting, an activity, an usual activity which we conduct every year or every month. It's a summer school for trans people. We gather all those people once a year, we inform them in order to create an environment for them where they would feel good. And a propagandistic channel has made the news from that. Just like that. A news, apparently neutral one, but it is presented in such a way, and it's written that close to the elections, the Genderdoc-M organizes a summer school or a camp for Genderdoc for trans people. So it is presented in such a way that it arises some negative emotions, anti-European emotions, among the people who already have those prejudices. So this specifically new form of propaganda that is used is like a trap. It's a very dangerous trap because it makes the pro-European parties to detach from the right, equal rights for all the people, regardless if they are LGBT or not. And it means it's presenting the pro-European parties as being the parties who were posting those posters. Those posters were not posted by them, but in the end they render a message, a homophobic message. So the pro-European parties are presented in a light that they are homophobes by saying that no, the government has no connection to those posters, and we don't intend to distribute in schools positive information about the LGBT community. So these are the most dangerous ones, and we should think how to combat that, how to tackle that phenomenon.
Thank you very much, Ms. Frolov, and thank you for sticking to the 7-minute limit. These are all concerning matters that you, cases that you pointed out to, and the novel tendencies and trends they are using in the public space. We also would like to ask and hear about from Mr. Sergiu Martin about if he can tell us more about the existing legislation about how the Audiovisual Media Services Code regulate disinformation and hate speech, and what can be done what is done, including can be done in order to prevent and sanction when this type of when hate speech is being recorded in the media. Again, also feel free to speak in Romanian, and if you can also stick to the 7 minutes limit.
Da, vă mulțumesc mult. Bună ziua tuturor.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. First of all, I express my gratitude for the opportunity to express my thoughts of audiovisual services in order to promote a civilized discourse and civilized speech, in order to amplify the democratic processes. The existence of a society based on democratic principles is based on the dialogue between the members of the respective society and the groups that they form, comparing to different criteria. In this context, the informational disorders from which the hate speech is also part affect the democratic state by posing a threat to its existence, and it can combat this hate speech, and it represents a risk for any institution of the state. The activity of the Audiovisual Council is imposed by two barriers. One is to remedy this phenomenon, and another one is to tackle this phenomenon. By approaching the issue and the basic tool represented by the information campaign, and this year, especially in the context of the elections of 28 September, regarding a campaign for raising the awareness of the electoral process, disinformation, and also hate speech. On the other hand, the Audiovisual Council monitors constantly all the media services presented by the media suppliers, of which is a part of hate speech and disinformation, and their action of the media and audiovisual services from the sanctions. They can also lead to the retrieval of the license, to withdrawal of the license of those media posts, and also developed jointly with the civil society and as being part of normative regulations of this. Here I would mention the methodology of monitoring, methodology on acknowledging and assessment of the cases of disinformation, also the regulation on the audiovisual providers, reporting to the preventive measures. From our point of view, they should be the first and the most important step in combating and tackling the hate speech that affects not only the good democratic processes, but also the fundamental electoral processes, and also affects a democratic system. A democratic system cannot exist without debating the problems of public interest with the participation of the entire society, and disinformation and the hate speech and marginalization of certain categories of population, and limiting their access to dialogue based on the gender, by disseminating information, they make the existence of a democratic state practically impossible. The modifications and the regulations on the audiovisual code have placed a task to monitor and supervise the media services and the jurisdictions of the audiovisual system of the Republic of Moldova regarding the hate speech and dissemination of the hate speech and disinformation. An extension of the mandate of the Audiovisual Council in order for it to achieve its tasks in a more efficient manner, and the regulation activity in the audiovisual national space. And the aim is to ensure pluralistic information of the population. And this, according to the legal provisions, is the mission of the Council as a guarant, as a warrant of the norms in audiovisual system. Referring to the sanctions that the Council can apply, first of all, I would mention that it would have a severe, acute character of the problem, and the disinformation cases and such types of speech have an isolated character. In the Republic of Moldova, probably in all the world, the problem and the issue is that all this information is part of the migration of information in online format. On 21st August, they have been made, such the last modifications, Thus, first of all, the attribution of the Council were extended from the perspective of the types of information disseminated within the unlinear media services. In this were included also combating and tackling the hate speech and disinformation. Also, the upper limit was enhanced, including for disinformation and using of the hate speech. Thus, in the case of the first derogation, the amount or the fine will be up to 5,000 euros. And also it can be enhanced up to from 5,000 to 12,000 euros if it is repeated. And a repeated inaction or a repeated case might lead to the retrieval or withdrawal of the license of a media provider.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sergiu Martin. This is a very informative overview of what the Audiovisual Council can do, and maybe giving ideas about what more can be done in stricter regulation in future. I would like to now open the floor for Ms. Mirela Chiriac, come from the Council of Europe, which is working extensively in Moldova in the past years to strengthen capacity of institutions of law enforcement and civil society to prevent and address hate speech. So I would like to ask you to please speak more about what are the specific institutions the Council of Europe has been assisting, and in what measures have you been able to help these institutions to establish? What challenges have you encountered in the implementation, and then what are the biggest successes you've so far achieved in combating hate speech and hate crime, and so in general, how do you what is your focus, and what has been have you been able to change and help in the country so far?
Thank you, Ilina, and I would like to thank also the organizing team for the invitation to participate in this webinar, alongside with being glad to share on our work to prevent and counter hate speech. I'm also very happy for the opportunity to take part in this exchange, which comes indeed in challenging times for the Republic of Moldova in terms of escalating hatred and intolerance, in particular ahead of parliamentary elections. So I represent the joint European Union Council of Europe project on combating discrimination, hate speech and hate crimes in the Republic of Moldova as part of the Partnership for Good Governance program. Therefore, I will be glad to share insights from our main project activities to fight hate speech in the context of electoral campaigns. I want to highlight in the first place that our initiatives dedicated to prevention and combating of hate speech are, of course, part of a continuous holistic process, which includes, among others, support for a better law enforcement to relevant authorities, capacity building of legal professionals, staff of law enforcement authorities, other relevant actors, building and facilitating platforms of cooperation with institutions, civil society partners for a more efficient case handling, ensuring peer exchanges, including at regional level for taking over best practices, and of course, wider awareness raising campaigns to tackle systemic problems of hatred and discrimination and to change attitudes in the society, but also to foster the trust of citizens on reporting acts motivated by prejudice to the relevant authorities and ultimately combating stigmatization in the society. All these activities are based on a set of comprehensive standards, recommendations, and guiding tools developed by the Council of Europe through its Committee of Ministers, the European Commission Against Racism and Intolerance, as well as the case law and practice of the European Court of Human Rights. With reference to the topic that we're discussing today, the Committee of Ministers' recommendation on hate speech, adopted in 2022, serves as a benchmark for both state and non-state actors in Council of Europe member states, including Moldova, to safeguard the human dignity of those targeted by hate speech and ensure their inclusion in public discourse. Also, the European Commission Against Racism and Intolerance in short, ECRI, through its most recent recommendations that have been issued in November 2024, calls public figures, including high-level officials, politicians, to take a firm and public stance against the expression of hate speech and to react to any such expression with strong counter hate speech messages and alternative speech, but also it recommends that elected bodies and political parties adopt their own codes of conduct that prohibit the use of or dissemination of hate speech. Now speaking about more specific actions of addressing hate speech during electoral campaigns, I will give some examples of what we managed to successfully implement so far. For instance, if we speak about monitoring tools, we developed a guide combating hate speech in the media in the Republic of Moldova as part of our assistance to the Audiovisual Council and the relevant authorities in the country, but also to media stakeholders, aiming to combat effectively unacceptable forms of expression in the public domain, especially in the audiovisual media services. And we are glad that this toolkit served also as basis for the adoption of the methodology for monitoring hate speech by the Audiovisual Council, as also Sergiu mentioned earlier, which was approved in May 2023. As a follow-up to the development of the above-mentioned guide, further efforts were made to improve also the capacities of monitors on the application of this toolkit and the new methodology. And due to our good partnership and cooperation with both the Audiovisual Council and Promo-LEX Association, we conducted tailor-made course for the monitors from the Audiovisual Council to improve their capacities for assessing and processing hate speech in audiovisual media through practical training sessions. This set of actions back then came right in time for ensuring a more comprehensive approach to combating hate speech in media in the campaign for local general elections in autumn 2023, but also served as basis for improving this practice ahead of the next electoral periods in our country. Another major step that we did towards reducing levels of hate speech and discrimination ahead of elections was to improve, in cooperation with the Central Electoral Commission, the code of conduct for electoral campaigns, which is addressed to electoral competitors, media, other electoral stakeholders. And here I make reference again to the ECRI recommendations, which I mentioned earlier. The improved code aims to encourage additional commitment of signatory candidates in elections to refrain also from hate speech, sexism, which very often goes hand in hand with hate speech in electoral campaigns, as the practice shows, and any expression of hatred, discrimination, or gender-based violence against competitors in elections. We believe that this also was an impactful move, also as shown as figures publicly announced by the Central Electoral Commission of the Republic of Moldova. For instance, the improved code was signed by approximately 400 electoral candidates for general local elections. In the campaign for presidential elections, the code has had 10 signatories, and last week the Central Electoral Commission convened candidates for parliamentary elections for adopting the code, which remains open for signature during the ongoing electoral campaign. So we look forward to collect this data once the procedure will be finalized. And of course, we worked a lot on the awareness raising component. And here I'm very happy to share that we have built excellent synergies around this cause in our office under the lead of the project on elections and with support of our projects on anti-discrimination and equality, media, local governance, Istanbul Convention, and also in partnership with UN Women Central Electoral Commission. In this framework of cooperation, we conducted public roundtables ahead of all 3 electoral campaigns in the last years to address jointly with representatives of political parties, media, national and local authorities, civil society, as well as individual citizens, measures needed to tackle hate speech, gender-based intolerance, and sexism during the election period. Of course, building on lessons learned in the context of previous electoral campaigns. This proved to be an efficient platform to share actual challenges confronted by electoral competitors, also through their personal stories and examples, but also to send a strong message in the public space that the rights and human dignity of anyone who is part of political processes needs to be safeguarded. Along with these specific actions to target hate speech and electoral processes, including those which I listed in my intervention, I would like to mention that ahead of electoral campaigns, during our activities, we shed light as much as possible on issues related to hate speech, discrimination, sexism in context of electoral processes, based on the most emerging needs and requests which come from our partner and beneficiary institutions. And here again, I refer to tailor-made trainings for police, judiciary, other legal professionals, to advancing platforms of cooperation. For example, we have a consolidated one between Police and Equality Council, another one with police and LGBTI community with the help of our colleagues from Genderdoc-M Center, where we can discuss practical aspects and improve the response to discrimination and hatred in the country.
Thank you.
I would like to conclude just 30 more seconds. I just want to conclude by mentioning that the results that we managed to achieve so far in our work on preventing and combating hate speech are due to joint efforts, excellent cooperation, including with Police,
Yes.
Equality Council, Audiovisual Council, People's Advocate Office, and of course the civil society partners who are supporting us in the implementation of our project activities. And referring also to your question about the challenges, I cannot say that we
Maybe, sorry, Dr. we can proceed with the other panelists. Maybe we can address that in the discussion if it's okay. So we don't,
Yes,
so
of
we stick to
course,
the
I
time.
agree with this. So thank you
Okay.
so much for your
Thank you.
attention. I'm open
Mhm.
to reply to the questions.
Thank you, thank you, and we thank you very much for this great overview of all the assistance that you've been giving through your work. We also have the most powerful law enforcement institution representative from Ms. Galina Pleșca, representative from the Ministry of Internal Affairs. This is when hate speech, as hate speech can easily turn into violence and real threat. It is very much important that the police and all the law enforcement agencies are sensibilized about what hate speech can do and how hate crime should be and that hate crime should be addressed. So, Ms. Pleșca, can you give us your insight from the institution? Can you give us information about has there been any sufficient or specialized training for police officers to recognize and handle hate speech or hate crime? And what tools and mechanisms does the police currently use to detect and investigate online hate speech, especially during elections?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me, Elina and Lukasz. Thank you for having me in this webinar, talking about what police is doing related to hate speech. Specifically, we all know that when the legislation was changed in 2022, from that year, Moldova has progressed immensely in this subject, especially if we are talking about the legislation related to hate speech. These changes from 2023, 2024, police has started to apply the law, if we are talking about the changes which were made, and all the institutions who are working with law, I'm talking here about the court as well, not only about police, they started to create their own tools in order to identify the crime related to hate speech. And also police had actually trainings and got a lot of information about how the law has changed and how we should apply it. Within these tools, we had made some guidance related to crime, hate speech crime, which were approved by the court. And on the police level, we had new processes which were standardized into standardizing everyone's knowledge and training of those officers who are working with hate speech. Also constating the contraventions which come to explain how to apply the legal framework. So all this framework and how we document this type of crimes, but also how do we work with the victims. I have to say that from 2024, in collaboration with Promo-LEX, we had presented the form related to the investigation code to hate speech, interpretation of the new legislation which is related to contraventions, including during elections, but not only about election times, but also the penal code. If we're talking about the violence related to hate speech. We apply these laws not only for police, but also for courts and for all the other authorities using the law. We are talking here about components which are related to crime in order to understand better how to use these tools and the changes in the law. We are using also some internal and external tools when we're talking about identifying and qualification of this type of crimes. And here I should mention that police has created, or within police, we have created some networks, contact networks, in order to understand and follow the crimes related to hate speech. And in 2024, we have started a project, a draft project, a pilot project, in order to create a local network, a local support network for victims who had suffered after hate speech crimes. And I have to say that we have great results, and a lot of institutions and organizations, local authorities, but also the civil society was involved in that. Also, we are involved in some communication platforms, external ones. And first of all, I'm mentioning the platform, the Equality Concilium, the platform which helps us coordinate and work with civil society and with groups who protect human rights and LGBTQ plus rights, but also with all the community in Moldova. So these platforms help us to have a better collaboration between us, between the institutions, when we are working with people and victims related to hate speech. I have to mention here that police is updating and analyzing all the data, not only from the direct files or requests they receive, but we are analyzing also those sources, external sources, as some reports, for example, from different civil institutions. And here I have to mention the cases related to discrimination, the reports from Promo-LEX related to hate speech during elections, but also reports from Genderdoc-M related to incidents related to LGBTQ people or community. And all these sources give us extremely useful information and add information to what exists officially. And police has a better, a more detailed overview of what is happening. We can identify better the cases which are related to hate speech crimes, and we can react more adequately in order to protect the victims of this type of crimes by applying the law. A very important element, which was mentioned by Mrs. Elena, is implementing the policies to combat hate speech by capacitating police officers. So, meaning to train them in order to ensure a better reaction and a more correct reaction when we're talking about hate speech. And we are talking here about specific trainings which police is doing in common with the partners which you can see on your screens, actually, the Consilium, Promo-LEX, Genderdoc-M, and some other partners which are present in this webinar. So if we're talking about more specific data,
Thank you very much.
do I have time or shall I come back in the Q&A session?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that great overview. It was very valuable to hear about your cooperation, especially with Promo-LEX, as I've put Irina Corobcenco for the end, because as Promo-LEX is basically a co-host host of this webinar. So Irina, everyone who works on elections in Moldova is aware of Promo-LEX and the tremendous work and experience that Promo-LEX has done in Moldova in monitoring elections. And also now we hear how good your cooperation is with the Ministry of Internal Affairs. So you've already issued the report. It registered one monitoring report. It is informing and reporting about the cases you observed. They are not a small number. Can you specifically, can you speak about what kind of hate speech is Promo-LEX observing so far, and what are the most vulnerable groups affected by hate speech and possible hate crimes in this period, in this pre-election period? Thank you. 7 minutes, please. Max.
Thank you so much, Elena. Thank you so much to everyone, actually, to all the colleagues. In collaboration with all the institutions and the partners, we are working greatly because people working there want to do more, want to change things. But I would like to share my screen because the questions you asked before I started this event were very good, and they contain data which, if I would be speaking just overall, they would be lost. So I need my screen to be shared. That's why I will go very quickly through them. You will see the images and the statistics, so you can ask me questions later on. But most of the times in Moldova, and I'm not talking about elections only, I will explain later why, we have registered different forms of hate speech. We are talking about homophobic, sexist speech, discrimination speech, violence speech, and other forms which are easier, let's say, just promoting stereotypes and discriminating some specific groups. And if we're talking about groups, we have a lot of groups, but most of the times our monitoring, which we are doing from 2018, shows that the biggest group which is affected by hate speech is are political groups, the LGBTQ plus community, women, and some other communities. So if you see the graph I made for you today, I would like you to see these boxes. The first box, the pink one, shows the number of cases identified by us compared to or reported to these groups in the time we were monitoring the hate speech overall. It was not a specific context. It was 2018, 2011, 2019. We were just trying to understand if hate speech is a problem for Moldova or not. What you see with turquoise, these are the cases which were identified in the report to these groups or related to these groups during elections specifically, all elections, all types of elections. And you can see down the years as well. And what you see with orange, orange is related to cases which were identified with groups. And here the Ukrainians appear as well, because those data were identified in the first 2 months when we were monitoring after the war has started in Ukraine. So what I want to say is, depending on the context, on the national context, with influence or with impact from those contexts, international as well, the hate speech can change the target. So in the first 2 months, for example, of when the war started in Ukraine, we have seen that Ukrainians were the target for hate speech. But overall, of course, the politicians, LGBTQ community and female are the biggest groups which are the target of hate speech. Of course, probably I will not say it wrong, but these groups are a target for hate speech also outside elections. So you can see here how many cases we identified and what type of cases we identified. I didn't include in this graph all the cases which were outside elections. So you can see overall how the authors of hate speech have moved and changed depending on the elections. And unfortunately, in the first year of monitoring, first month of monitoring, sorry, because we started monitoring also for the elections in this autumn. We started in July. By 19th of August, we had 163 cases of hate speech, which means about 8 hate speeches per day. And these 163 cases means about 54% of overall of all the hate speech which were identified in the same context of parliamentary elections in 2021. So it means that the hate speech has increased drastically if we compare to the last elections, parliamentary elections. And here I want to answer to Elena's question: how do authorities act or react? My colleagues, of course, also talked about that. Alina and Sergiu have mentioned it, but overall in 2025, in July specifically, we have seen that a lot of a big effort came from the authorities to document these cases and to capacitate their staff to identify hate speech. In 2025, in August, in this period actually, what I've noticed is that these institutions started to speak that we have some regulation. And for example, the Audiovisual Council and police mentioning that there is a new framework related to that. And police as well, for example, is informing that those who are participating in protests, they should avoid hate speech. But what I haven't seen, and maybe my colleagues from the Audiovisual Council and police can complete me, I haven't seen sanctions. Yes, we are talking about what exists, but I haven't seen sanctions which were made publicly, because Galina was saying that from 2022 in Moldova, hate speech can be sanctioned based on the controversial code and the penal code. So there is a way specifically to do this during elections or outside elections. And in the penal code, the hate speech also related to violence will be sanctioned. So this in short.
Thank you very much, Irina. That is very informative. And sort of maybe this could have gone also in the beginning, but it's I wanted to also wrap up with the whole presentations with all the fact finding that Promo-LEX has identified. We are now we are now able to start with the question and answers session. Please put your question in the Q&A box. Mr. Aldo Salgado has already posed a question, which Ms. Pleșca and Chiriac have responded. Mr. Salgado asked, are you planning to open source the tools developed to detect and combat hate speech? While Ms. Galina Pleșca was speaking, so I believe the question was supposed to her, which she answered that as regarding to the police standard operating procedures, they are internal administrative documents. They are not secret, but they are intended for internal use. While Ms. Mirela Chiriac informed of the guide for the Council of Europe is available on the website of Council of Europe, so feel free to visit the question and answers box and find the link there. We have two other questions, or three. Have you noticed any difference in public reaction to hate speech? I have the impression that the impact of homophobic statements has slightly increased. Is it false impression? Maybe Ms. Irina, you can give a short answer to this, and I will also guide to the other question. What specific sources are subject of monitoring? Does it include only social media or other sources such as traditional media, or any additional sources also? Are there any additional sources also involved? Since this is all about monitoring, I will read the other two questions as well. Is there any significant difference in hate speech in Russian versus Romanian language? And are there any other mechanisms other than the ethical code that EMB's election monitoring bodies can use to combat hate speech and gender-based violence in the elections or toward the candidate? So, Ms. Irina, if you can address those regarding monitoring, and we can, and then there's one more from another, what the methods or resources are available and used to monitor hate speech on Telegram specifically. So as you have the most, the biggest monitoring operation, can you please briefly address this? And then the electoral aims can use to combat, maybe Mr. Sergiu Martin or Mr. Galina Pleșca, if you can address the question on the if the election monitoring bodies can have any other mechanisms to monitor this type of speech. Please.
Thank you so much for the questions. I will start with the sources, and I will go later on into specific messages, hate messages. When we're talking about sources, it depends on the methodology you have. So in our case, in Promo-LEX, we have a list of more than 90 sources which are monitored. These sources are selected in very specific criteria. If I will group them, we are talking about public declarations, which is extremely important, public declarations of politicians, leaders, representatives of parties, of political parties, which participate in elections, but not all of them, because we don't have enough resources to monitor all of them. We are talking about Facebook pages, Telegram channels, and we are working also with an IT team working on a software which we are creating together in order to identify content, illegal content on TikTok. Meaning that we are doing this in stages. First, we identify the content, the type of content, based on what type of content we show him as example. Then those who have a red flag are checked by our team. And in the third stage, I am the person who is checking once more time what the software checked and the team checked, understanding if it's hate speech or not. Now, talking about homophobic reactions. Yes, you mentioned right. It's just a perception, depending on where you are. If you are in a bubble of human rights people, then you will see that there is a lot of acidity and yes, a lot of hate speech, homophobic hate speech is distributing. I haven't seen a difference between hate speech in Russian and Romanian, at least for now. I can't tell you exactly because it's just my perception, but we can come back to this question later on. But after the first month of monitoring, I would say that it's same type of hate speech between Romanian and Russian. If there will be some change, maybe we'll come back later. Mrs. Angelica? Yes, in Romanian, we have a lot more messages, a lot of more hate speech, because before, in the past, we had more Russian hate speech, but right now there is no big difference between Russian and Romanian. The messages did not change as number. There are a lot of messages, a lot of political parties are using both languages, but they have changed their form, as I was mentioning before as well. For example, there was a message saying that all LGBTQ, all gay people should be put on a ship and they should be put under the river Nistru. So they are using a very careful language right now. They are not so direct. This is the big difference with notice, as I was mentioning before as well.
Thank you. And can anyone address the question on are there any other mechanisms other than the ethical code that the EMDs can use to combat hate speech and gender-based violence in the elections or towards a candidate?
I can answer to this question. We have in the Republic of Moldova, we have a law in the Republic of Moldova which is mentioning that we can't use hate speech and also sexist messages. From my point of view, this is treated as a recommendation mainly, but a very big recommendation basically, because in the previous elections, in the presidential elections, 17 people signed this, but 4 people actually didn't follow it. But those who followed it, they didn't actually, they noticed that someone didn't follow it, but they didn't, no one actually talked about it, no one said about it. So we are talking here about sexist messages. From my point of view, and this is my personal point of view, this is very difficult to do because in Moldova, The recommendations are treated with a letter R, so they are not followed basically. But from 2011, we are talking that all the political parties should have their own policy conduct, and they should check how they use this type of speech in the public space. But as we noticed many times, they do it just to tick a box, they don't do it for real.
În foarte puține cazuri este respectat. În rest, discursul sexist poate fi sancționat sub umbrela definiției de discurs care incită la discriminare sau discurs de ură.
It can be sanctioned also in a controversial code.
Și contravențional.
And as Mr. Sergiu has mentioned, if it's generated by the media service supplier, and also we have in the legislation sanctions for sexist advertisement, but it's up to the Council of Competition to take action regarding that. And I think we have a code of conduct, ethical code for journalists in order to tackle the hate speech, but also some of them, they do respect that code, but others don't.
Thank you. We have a few more minutes to address a few more questions. There is a question on cyberbullying. Are there any specific issues around cyberbullying targeted at women in particular? And if so, what is being done to curb cyberbullying? Maybe Ms. Galina, Pleșca, you can tell us whether at all the Ministry of Internal Affairs is able to track cyberbullying and to sanction it. And then we have a question, if someone else can address it, what social about sources, social media platforms are commonly used for election campaigning and election-related information. In general, popular channels, Facebook, Telegram, these channels owned by media leader, political party leaders, pro-party media. Okay, so if we can track on cyberbullying? Does the police address cyberbullying? Is able to monitor?
Yes, of course. Regarding the controversial code, we have some actions which would combat cyberbullying. Of course, there are some controversial procedures already regarding on that, but it's a challenge for us, for the police, to identify or to monitor such cases online, because we do lack the tools, efficient tools for monitoring. For example, software or other packages or other tools based on AI, artificial intelligence, that would help us 24/7 to monitor different channels or social media platforms. Here we are basing ourselves on help of our partners, Promo-LEX, Genderdoc, those partners who do present such cases and come with a message to us and come with a request to us. In such cases, we do investigate or we do report on cyberbullying cases. I think the next question would be for me that you asked, right? I think I would add to cyberbullying that we have the national legislation, it was modified, it was amended, and cyberbullying is sanctioned as also the gender-based violence in the digital area. And also, I cannot go into many details now because I don't have them. I didn't prepare on that. But you have our contact details from the organizers, and we can share with you such information. Now, regarding the sources, identification of sources, I was telling you that in the case of politicians or opinion leaders, we are analyzing not only their manifestations in the public space, for example, discourses or meetings with electors, with the voters. We are analyzing their social media pages, either Facebook, YouTube, or Telegram, or Instagram, only if those pages are having a certain number of people, because it's unreal to follow all the web pages of all the politicians. So in the case of the leaders of opinion, we do follow certain channels of theirs, their social media channels mandatorily. And in the case of the others, they will also have Facebook pages, Telegram channels. It's not mandatory for those channels to belong to the politicians. They are also digital content creators that have a very big number of followers and which can have an impact on their opinion. So they enter into our list of sources, let's say, if I managed to answer your question, I hope.
There is also one comment commending to the organizers, the European Platform for Democratic Elections and Promo-LEX from Mr. Agbadu from Nigeria, says commenting the event and the speakers and fantastic conversation. The topic is relevant to the Nigerian context, and he's asking how we use the tools you're working and the work you're doing in Nigeria for the upcoming general elections. So your work is needed in other countries as well. As we are nearing toward the end, I don't see new questions posed in the chat for question and answers. There was one about Telegram as well. I think Irina briefly touched upon it. It's Telegram is one of the Telegram channels are quite popular in Moldova, and they're part of the monitoring. But I believe Lukasz will want me to proceed towards concluding the webinar, and to thank all of you for active participation and the tremendous overview you've given on what you're all doing about preventing and sanctioning hate speech in Moldova, but specifically about first empowering and capacitating institutions about how to actually first identify it and identifying as a problem which is present in the country, which is how it's spread and towards who it's spread. The tremendous work, Ms. Galina Pleșca, you mentioned about the network of support for victims of hate crimes, which is also very important. So the advance is, unfortunately, hate speech is present, especially around elections, aimed towards vulnerable groups, as you identified in the report. But the institutions and the civil society are increasing their capacities about how to once identify, monitor it, and address it, and to be able to the best that they can to diminish the negative effects that it is causing. You all addressed, also pointed out to the work being done with educating and political parties through the code of conduct and declarations for fair elections, and they are the education aimed towards politicians to be aware about this problem. That will be still a long work that needs to be done there. But again, we see Moldova as at least in my eyes, as a great example of how all your institutions are collaborating together to address this problem, and we can work on about how to decrease the negative effects of this problem. Lukasz, now I can hand it over to you to conclude.
Thank you so much, Ilina. Thank you to all speakers. There is nothing to add. Subject matter-wise, I am extremely happy and grateful to Promo-LEX for recommending fantastic speakers, fantastic panelists. This has been very, very smooth. As EPDE, in cooperation with Promo-LEX, we will try to squeeze in the 5th and final webinar just before the elections. This one is a little TBC, but we will do everything in our powers to make it happen. And as always, a reminder that EPDE and I personally will be in Moldova to observe the upcoming elections. For us, this is more of a study trip since we don't produce a report and there is no press conference. But we will be there. We will bring senior representatives of our network members. So we look forward to that. And if you are on the ground during the elections as well, please reach out so that we can connect. Once again, thank you to everyone. Thank you to our comms team led by Matthias, and thank you to the interpreters. And again, thank you, Irina, thank you, speakers, and thank you to all participants. Let's stay in touch.